This is ChangeMakers with Katie Gore, finding the right solutions for the affordable housing community.
This week's ChangeMaker is Lindsey Reames, the Executive Director of the Grand Rapids Housing Commission. Lindsey has over 30 years of experience in affordable, subsidized, and public housing administration. Prior to Grand Rapids, Lindsey served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Field Operations to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. During her decades in management positions, Lindsey has gained hands-on experience and provided oversight and technical assistance to help numerous housing authorities overcome challenges. Lindsey, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here in this forum. I usually like to start by just having you walk us through personally what led you to affordable housing, how your progression has gone, and just really take us through your journey here.
So I don't think most of us who end up in affordable housing ever anticipated that we were going to start our careers in affordable housing. But if you have a passion for serving people, it just hooks you in from the very beginning. So I actually started my career at HUD in a very low capacity job while I was still in college to support myself. And so early on, you graduate from college and you think, okay, now I'm going to get a real job. And HUD was just so generous and kind to me with personal and professional development. Over the years that I had lots of opportunities to continue to learn and grow and move up the chain and do exciting things. And I just became a huge advocate and developed this great passion for affordable housing and just serving people.
You know, I hear that a lot from people who are in affordable housing. It's the balance of passion and personal touch and really making an impact. It's a common thread in a lot of professionals. Do you see that in your coworkers still today? You know, you're seasoned, you've been there for a few decades. Is that still sitting right up in the forefront?
I would say it definitely is. The pay is not always that great, and it's a really hard job. Lots of jobs in housing are very difficult, either from a policy perspective or from a just people perspective. You know, customer service, following their paths from desperation all the way to self-sufficiency and economic independence. So it's definitely a trend, I think, in the industry where people stay in this business because they have that passion.
And it's a unique balance because you have to be driven with the details about compliance, but yet you have to have that human factor as part of your personality and as part of your professional course too. So it's a really unique niche, isn't it?
Yes, it is a unique niche. And I am a huge proponent of customer service and treating others as we would want to be treated. So there are always great examples when you hear staff chatting about how long they had to be on hold with Social Security Administration while they were dealing with a personal issue. And it's such an opportunity to say, so see, you know, we can translate that personal experience into how we do business and good customer service at the Housing Commission.
It sounds like you have incorporated this into your current role. So seems like a nice transition to talk about Grand Rapids, Michigan. Are you from there? How did you end up there? Give us some of the information of what you're doing now in Grand Rapids.
So I actually ended up in Michigan in my late teens. I was a military brat, so my father was in the military. We ended up in Michigan, Upper Michigan at Fort Smith Air Force Base, which is now closed. As a senior in high school, I ended up there. So I came to Grand Rapids after a couple years of community college to continue my 4-year degree and have stayed in Grand Rapids for that number of years. It's almost 35 years. So even while I was working DC-based jobs, I traveled pretty significantly. So we never moved the family. So I commuted a lot. So Grand Rapids has been home for about 35 years.
What is Grand Rapids known for? I've been there a couple of times, but I'm not sure all of our listeners have. So I want you to just give a nice shout out for Grand Rapids. Tell us a little bit about it, and then we'll segue into the affordable housing challenges there.
Yeah, so Grand Rapids used to be the best kept secret, but as we continue each year to show up on those nationwide lists of best place to raise a family, best place
Yep.
to live, it's sort of grown in recognition. It also hosts, an international art prize event every year. It's home to many businesses, including the founders of Amway and lots of office furniture places, Steelcase, as an example. Over the last, I would say, half a decade or so, it has really become known for its revitalization in the downtown area to arts and community events, and actually even some additional housing downtown. So it's a happening place.
All of those areas, Lansing, Grand Rapids, all of those great communities right there in Michigan have, just like you mentioned, they've been affordable places of attraction, but word is definitely out. So how are you feeling that pinch now for affordable housing?
Oh, we are definitely feeling the pinch. Grand Rapids is a very tight market right now. Recently, we were listed by Rent Cafe as one of the top 20 most competitive housing markets in the United States.
Wow.
An apartment for rent on the market right now doesn't stay on for more than 15 to 20 days. It has an average of 22 applicants for that one unit. And our occupancy rate is 2% higher than the national average at 98%. So, from a rental perspective, rents are very high and the market's very competitive. But it's also that way with the median price of homes for sale. So, our prices for homes since 2016 have increased 99%. Homeownership definitely is a very big challenge for our lower income families. Also, the Bowen National Research firm recently just completed an updated housing assessment. They did one in 2020, but just updated it for 2022. And just the significant changes in that 2-year period are absolutely almost unbelievable if you didn't follow what was happening in Grand Rapids. We have, a gap of rental units for this year of about 5,000 units. And that's up from just 2 years ago from 3,500. And then same thing for homeownership sales. Part of our challenge is our growth. Our population has grown by 10% in the last decade, and it's trending at over a 1% increase every year for the next 5 years.
Well, this sounds like an emerging trend, but I don't think this has surprised you guys. I mean, or has it surprised you that this kind of growth is happening?
I don't think it's surprised a lot of us. I think what has surprised us is that from a state perspective, Grand Rapids is growing. It's the fourth largest county in the state now, obviously behind Detroit. But while other communities have stagnated growth or declines in growth, ours continues to grow. And I think that's a direct result of very concerted efforts to make the community a place where folks want to live. But, it creates additional challenges or unintended consequences that we may not have completely thought through as a result of the success.
So how is the Grand Rapids Housing Commission doing when it comes to leasing? Because there's been so many vouchers hit the streets and many housing agencies have really struggled with leasing here lately. It's been a big focus of HUD initiatives, and we're starting to see oversight as well. How are you guys doing utilizing these vouchers? Have you guys had any tips you can offer?
We have seen some significant changes. So our success rate for our voucher program is, depending on what month you're looking at, is between 30 and 40%. And that's down from 85% just a few years ago. So to put that into perspective, those of us in the housing industry get that. But when I have conversations with folks in the private sector, and I say success rate is 30 to 40%, they don't understand the ramifications of that till I say, that means if I send 100 families out looking for a unit and I give them 6 months or more to look, only 30 of them are going to successfully find units in Kent County. And then the light bulbs kind of go off.
Yeah.
So we're doing a number of different things. One of them is in November, we launched our Housing Barrier Fund. And that fund has two components. First, for program participants. So we're trying to really pinpoint what the barriers are to our families finding units. So besides the lack of available units and affordability, there are also those other challenges that many of our families face. They're realities for them. One is, not having money for security deposits. Maybe they left a unit in the past for circumstances beyond their control, owing money to a utility company. And now they can't get utilities in their name unless they pay off their balance or put a deposit down. It could be a barrier related to appliances. Recently, we had a participant whose unit was all ready to go, all the paperwork, they're ready to move in, but the unit didn't have appliances. They were tenant-provided appliances, which we know creates a significant challenge for the families we serve to now have to find funding for appliances. So this barrier fund helps address any barriers that our program participants might have with being able to be housed, to address those barriers and get them housed. The second component of the fund is a landlord incentives program. And so we're providing landlord incentives for brand new landlords who have never participated in our program, for those who are returning, who may have left for whatever reasons. And then we also didn't want to forget our landlords who are longtime friends of the agency and our programs. And so we offer them an incentive as well, sort of a sign-on bonus in all cases, for up to 3 additional units. So when they bring more units to us, we want to thank them and acknowledge them. So that is starting to really pick up speed as we've continued to publish and notice that availability out in the community. The other thing that we've done is we've had to go to 120% of fair market rents.
Yeah.
We know that the fiscal year 23 fair market rents published by HUD were way better than they have been in years and more reflective, but they still didn't hit the mark for Grand Rapids. So about a year and a half ago, we also launched a market study that we have now submitted to HUD. It clearly documents fair market rents needing to increase for our locality. And so we are pretty confident that we're going to hear in the next couple of weeks with success for approval of that or acceptance of that market study, and we will see an increase in our fair market rents.
Those are great, innovative items. I really like that housing barrier fund, and I'm hoping to hear that it's really successful in helping people land better housing, more housing, faster housing, all of those components. Was that approved by your board, or was that a city initiative? How did that come to be?
So we initially had some funding that was provided to us years ago that had sort of been forgotten. And so we went back to the funder and said, this is really what we would like to use these remaining funds for. And they agreed. So of course, we also sought approval from our board. And we have a commitment to replenish that fund once it's gone. And so now, as a moving to work designated housing agency, we will have some flexibilities to be able to ensure that we can continue to fund that initiative.
Great job on that. I hope our listeners were taking notes when you mentioned all of the things that fund was providing. Speaking of another innovation moment for you and Grand Rapids, you guys were winners of the Award of Merit from NARO. It's one of the coveted industry awards. Tell us what project you won it for and what it was like to win.
So we won that award for Antoine Court Apartments in the affordable housing category. So I won't take all the credit from initiation because Antoine was in the mix when I started working here. But what I will take some credit for is making sure that we got to the finish line.
Right.
Because Antoine Court was started pre-pandemic or right at pandemic time. And so there were some significant challenges around supplies and workforce. So we were able to still complete Antoine Court Apartments with minimal delays and actually minimal increased costs considering the fluctuation that we saw in building supplies at the height of the pandemic. So we leased all of the units within 6 weeks and had full occupancy by the end of December 2021. So that was quite a feat. There were a little bit of delays with construction, so that meant we just had to really be on our game to get everything leased very quickly. So we were really excited about Antoine Court. It was the first new development that Grand Rapids had opened in about 4 years, and it's 50 units. It preferences veterans, but it also has 18 units of permanent supportive housing, which targets chronic homeless individuals. And for everyone who serves those families or households, we all know that with housing also has to come all the supportive services they need to stay housed. So we have an on-site master level social worker who works with those families. And we've been, very happy. We've only had a couple units turn in the last year and a half or so. So the community and the residents who live there are very happy with Antoine Court.
Excellent. I can see why it won the award. Tell us now about the potential of people who move into a brand new unit, who have supportive services, who have stabilized housing. What does that do to their life and their life's potential?
Putting my people hat on, I think it gives them a greater sense of dignity and hope and a sense of everything's going to be okay. They're going to be just fine. And so, building on that and making sure that it's not a one and done with households. Housing first is great, but if you don't bring all the supportive services, the families aren't successful. And so we make a lot of efforts to engage those families and check in with them on a regular basis, just to assess what they still might need. We have a couple participants, who really had difficult childhoods. We have one household who is, in her early 20s, and she was in and out of foster care, and she was a victim of trafficking. And this has just given her a whole new opportunity to start fresh. She's enrolled in a 4-year college. And so it's really exciting watching the participants and our families that we serve really transition to where they maybe felt a lot of hopelessness to a lot of potential, and they're just thriving.
That right there explains why so many of us are working in affordable housing, because it's more than a unit, it's more than a lease, it's more than an inspection standard, isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that, because it really encourages me and those who are listening to the podcast.
For sure.
Well, on that note, let's take a break. But coming up in the second part of my conversation with Lindsey Reames, the Executive Director of the Grand Rapids Housing Commission, Lindsey shares why affordable housing leaders should avoid complacency.
don't become passive when you're operating well. When you're designated a high performer, that's not the time to let your guard down. That actually is the time to raise them even higher.
Thanks for listening to ChangeMakers with Katie Gore. To find out more about Katie, go to quadel.com. That's QUADEL.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.